Thomas Harrison straightened his tie for the third time, watching his triplet daughters twirl in their pink dresses near the restaurant entrance. At 42, he'd gotten used to the stares that came with raising three identical 5-year-olds alone. What he hadn't gotten used to was dating. "Daddy, is the lady nice?" Emma asked, her small hand tugging at his sleeve. "I hope so, sweetheart," he said quietly, wondering the same thing himself. His assistant had arranged this blind date, assuring him that Patricia, a corporate attorney, would appreciate a man of his position. Thomas had reluctantly agreed, but his daughter's babysitter had canceled at the last minute. He'd almost called the whole thing off. Then he'd looked at those three hopeful faces and decided if someone couldn't accept his girls, they couldn't accept him. Sarah Mitchell was running late, her nurse's scrubs still on under her coat. The hospital shift had gone long, and she'd barely had time to pin up her blonde hair before rushing out. Her sister had set up this blind date weeks ago, insisting that Sarah, at 34, needed to get back out there after focusing solely on her career for so long. She pushed through the restaurant door, scanning the warm interior for a woman dining alone. Instead, her eyes landed on a striking man in a charcoal suit, standing with three little girls who looked like cherubs from a Renaissance painting. The hostess approached Sarah with an apologetic smile. "Ms. Mitchell, there's been a mix-up with your reservation. The gentleman you were supposed to meet, he's not coming. But Mr. Harrison over there, his date canceled as well. We thought perhaps—" Sarah glanced at the man again. He'd noticed her now, a flicker of surprise crossing his handsome features. The three girls were staring at her with open curiosity. "I understand if you'd rather not," the hostess continued. "We can seat you separately." Something in those children's faces made Sarah's decision. She'd spent her entire career caring for kids at County General. She knew that look, the hope mixed with fear of disappointment. "No," Sarah said softly. "I'll say hello." Thomas watched the blonde woman approach, his heart sinking. She was in medical scrubs, looking tired and kind, nothing like the polished attorney he'd been expecting. She was going to take one look at his chaotic life and walk right back out. "I'm Sarah," she said, her voice gentle. "I think we've both been stood up." The hostess suggested we might keep each other company, but I understand if you'd prefer not to. Lily, always the boldest of his daughters, stepped forward. "Are you a doctor?" Sarah knelt down, bringing herself to the child's eye level. "I'm a nurse. I take care of children at the hospital." "Do you give shots?" Sophie asked nervously. "Sometimes," Sarah admitted, "but I always hold their hand and tell them they're brave." Emma studied Sarah with serious eyes. "Our mommy's in heaven. Daddy says she watches over us." The words hung in the air. Thomas felt his throat tighten, waiting for Sarah to make an excuse and leave. Instead, she smiled with such genuine warmth that something in his chest loosened. "Then you have someone very special looking after you," Sarah said simply. Over dinner, the conversation flowed more easily than Thomas had imagined possible. Sarah didn't flinch when Emma spilled her juice or when Sophie needed help cutting her chicken. She listened to Lily's rambling story about their cat with the same attentive patience he imagined she used with her young patients. "I'm sorry," Thomas said during a brief moment when all three girls were occupied with their desserts. "This isn't what you signed up for tonight." Sarah looked at him with those clear blue eyes. "No," she agreed. "It's better. I've spent too many evenings alone in my apartment after long shifts." "This feels real." "Real is messy," he warned, gesturing at the chaos of their table. "I work in pediatrics," she said with a quiet laugh. "Messy doesn't scare me." As the evening wound down, Thomas found himself not wanting it to end. Sarah had made his daughters laugh, had treated them like people rather than obstacles, and had listened to his stories about running his tech company with genuine interest rather than the calculating assessment he'd gotten from other dates. "I'd like to see you again," he said as they stood outside the restaurant, his daughters holding hands between them. "If you're willing to take on all four of us." Sarah was quiet for a moment, and Thomas braced himself for the polite rejection. She was young, accomplished, with her whole life ahead of her. Why would she choose his complicated situation? "I work Tuesday and Thursday evenings," Sarah said finally. "But I'm free Saturday afternoon. Maybe we could take the girls to the park." 6 months later, Sarah sat in the same restaurant, this time for a celebration. Thomas had insisted on returning to where they'd met, and the girls had been bubbling with excitement all morning. "Sarah," Emma said, climbing into her lap with the ease of long familiarity. "Daddy says you're family now." Sarah met Thomas's eyes across the table, feeling that same flutter she'd felt the first night. "Is that so?" "We all voted," Lily announced seriously. "It was unanimous." "Unanimous," Thomas corrected gently, though his smile was wide. Sophie, usually the quietest, spoke up. "We love you, Sarah." The simple declaration broke something open in Sarah's heart. She'd spent so many years caring for other people's children, never imagining she might have a family of her own. And now, through a chance encounter and a canceled date, she'd found not just love but belonging. "I love you all too," she whispered, pulling the girls close. Thomas reached across the table, taking her free hand in his. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for staying that first night, for seeing us instead of running away." Sarah thought about the tired, uncertain woman who'd walked through those doors half a year ago, and the life she'd been living, safe, predictable, and ultimately lonely. Sometimes the best things happened when plans fell apart. "Thank you," she replied, "for showing me what I was missing." As they left the restaurant that evening, Thomas carrying a sleeping Sophie while Emma and Lily held Sarah's hands, she realized that home wasn't a place. It was these people, this moment, this unexpected family formed from a mix-up and a choice to stay. And she wouldn't change a single thing.